Well, hello friends. How are you doing today? Just wanted to begin to read some of the other notes that I've been creating on Facebook. I don't know, many of you probably can't, I don't know if you can view Facebook files or not, but when you're on YouTube and you don't have a Facebook account, I'm not sure if you can view those files. So I'm going ahead and reading these notes that I've compiled for Facebook, and we'll go from there. Anyway, just pardon the fact that I'm reading them. I'd like to have it all memorized, but there's just so much information that the Lord's been downloading lately, and just trying to get it out there in formats that people can read. So anyway, this note's entitled, As the Days of Noah Were. Matthew 24:37-44 says, But as the days of Noah were, so also will the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered the ark, and did not know until the flood came and took them all away, so also will the coming of the Son of Man be. Then 2 men will be in the field, one will be taken and the other left. 2 women will be grinding at the mill, one will be taken and the other left. Watch therefore, for you do not know what hour your Lord is coming. But know this, that if the master of the house had known what hour the thief would come, he would have watched and not allowed his house to be broken into. Therefore you also be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour that you do not expect. So we know from Yeshua, Jesus' own mouth, that there would be a great similarity between what was going on in the days of Noah and what will be going on in our world when he returns. We know from the Noah narrative that begins late in chapter 5 that the world had become a very corrupt place in those days, and that God had to take action to deal with that corruption. And so he had Noah build an ark, probably much like the above photo, and that photo was courtesy of the Ark Encounter exhibit in Kentucky, so that those that God considered righteous, as well as enough animals to begin a new life after the flood water subsided, would be able to reproduce. But are there any other clues in the Noah narrative that could help us understand more clearly when the end of this current age will come? For the sake of this article, let's look at 3 specific things God, for whatever his reasons, and he always has reasons for everything he says and does, reveals to us. Genesis 5:32 tells us, And Noah was 500 years old, and Noah begat Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Genesis 6:3 states, And the Lord said, My spirit shall not strive with man forever, for he is indeed flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. Genesis 7:6 records, Noah was 600 years old when the flood waters were on the earth. By these verses, we know that God spoke about 2 specific time spans. The first and third verses combined reveal a 100-year time period between the birth of Noah's 3 sons and the coming of the flood. The verse between those 2 other verses reveal that God had 120 years from that time he uttered those words until the flood began. So what significance, if any, do those numbers have for us today as it relates to the current days in which we are living? Well, I'm glad you asked, but let's review a couple things first. As most people reading this post will probably already know, the Hebrew year 5777 is about to come to a close on September 23rd, 2017, which is the Feast of Trumpets. Actually, I need to correct that. It's actually 2 days before. The Feast of Trumpets is 2 days before the Feast of Trumpets, or before the, the Feast of Trumpets is 2 days before the September 23rd sign. So sorry about that. Or more traditionally referred to as Rosh Hashanah, meaning the head of the year. On that day, there is a significant event happening in the heavens, when likely, for the first time in history, the stars, planets, and I said plants, I got to go at that too. It's good that I'm rereading these things. I got to go back and fix them. Constellations, sun, and moon will all be in exact alignment related to the first 2 verses of Revelation 12:1 and 2. Many also know that just 33 days before that, there will be the first of two solar eclipses in a nearly 7-year time span that will cross the U.S. The first one from coast to coast, not touching any other country at all. The last time an eclipse like that happened, and here I said it was in 1776. I've not been able to absolutely verify that. Some sources said it was in 1776. Other sources say it was before 1776. So anyway, which was just prior to our nation's independence from the British tyranny. There are other details about these above-mentioned events, which are found in another note, which I will link at the bottom of this page for those who may like more details. Now, let me clarify that. The 1776, the eclipse that we're about to go through is a total eclipse from coast to coast. There's been other total eclipses in our country between now and 1776, but they've not crossed our country from coast to coast. And the other thing is they have not avoided touching any other country. This is going to be out of the ocean, across our country, and out in the ocean again, touching no other country. So, and I've had another person suggest to me that the last time that has happened was back in the 1200s. So this is a very, very unusual eclipse here this year. Moving forward, or backwards as the case may be, 50 years ago, following the Six-Day War in 1967, which began after the British troops withdrew from that region, and many of the Muslim countries surrounding Israel invaded, trying to get rid of Israel once and for all, but were miraculously defeated by a very young and much smaller and much less equipped military force. After nearly 2,000 years, Jerusalem was once again, and rightfully so, in Jewish hands. As most also know, this happened on the year of Jubilee, which the Bible declares to be a once every 50-year celebration, in which not only is the land to rest again as it had during each of the previous 7-year periods, but in Jubilee all debts were to be forgiven, and all land that has been sold was to be returned to its original owners. 20 years before that, 70 years ago, the UN voted Israel to become a nation. Now, here is where it starts to get really interesting as it relates to Noah's Day. 100 years ago, and remember from up above we had a 100-year figure, this year, 100 years ago this year, the Balfour Declaration was signed, beginning the process of restoring Israel to Jewish control. Okay, now, what about the 120-year figure? Well, hold on to your hats, because it was 120 years ago that the Jewish leaders met in Switzerland between August 29th and 31st, 1897, to establish the Zionist Congress to declare that they will work to make Israel a nation again. Oh, and do you know what dates those happen to be on the Hebrew calendar? Well, the first day happens to be the 10th of the day of the month of Elul, which is only 20 days from the first day of Tishri, which ushers in the Feast of Trumpets. And that puts the last day of this Congress exactly 18 days before the Feast of Trumpets. And do you know what the number 18 stands for in Hebrew? Well, the two Hebrew letters used to write the number 18, and just as a side note, Hebrew letters and numbers are written with the same characters, are the Het, which is the character for 8, and the Yud, which is the character for 10. And together, they spell the word Chai, which in Hebrew means life. By way of a quick update, the Lord prompted me this morning to check something I began researching the other day when I wrote this note. It turns out that if you count backwards 33 days from the last day of the Zionist Congress mentioned above, there was also a solar eclipse on that day too. My. This is getting very, very interesting. So, anyway, for what it's worth, folks, there'll be other videos coming shortly, so just stay tuned. Please do share these with your friends. These are very, very critical times we're living in. I know some of you watching this won't believe it's of any significance, and that's fine. If you don't believe it, that's okay. But as I'm understanding, Ezekiel 33:3 and around that area of Scripture tells us that If we see the sword, as watchmen on the wall, if we see the sword coming upon the land, and we do not warn the people, that their blood is on our hands. But if we warn the people, and they don't listen, the blood is on their hands. So, I don't know about you, but personally, I feel like the sword's coming. I believe the Lord's making that very clear. Exactly what that's all going to look like, I can't 100% say, but I believe it's coming, and therefore I believe the warning needs to go out. So anyway, stay tuned for other videos, and thanks again. And by the way, this Ark Encounter here, it's an actual full-size scale replica of Noah's Ark that's in Kentucky. It's put together by the people who did the Creation Museum. I have not been. I've seen video tours of it. I've seen plenty of pictures. I would love to go if you can ever get there, and I would highly recommend it. But I know that that's an area that could potentially have some earthquakes too. Although I tend to think the Lord's probably going to. I would think He would spare this particular exhibit. But in any case, so God bless you folks. Take care. Love you all.